Good evening to all the participants. I welcome you on behalf of Madras Tax Bar to this session where Mr. Satish Sundar sir and Mr. S.R. Sundar sir will be taking us this session on cross-examination and overview under the Customs Act and other allied acts. And APS sir, AP Srinivas sir will be the moderator for this session. So the entire session will be moderated by APS sir, and end of the session we will take up the question answer round. You can if you have any queries, you can raise your hands in the app, or you can send a message in the chat. The chat option is enabled today. You can chat with everyone today, so you can put your questions in the group if you have any queries, and depending on the paucity of time, we will take up the questions. I over to you, APS sir.
Yes. Good evening to one and all. Good evening to all the participants, speakers, and our friends are here in many. So I welcome all of you to the session. So today's topic is on cross-examination under the Customs Act. We are not going to examine about the effectiveness and techniques or tools of cross-examination. On the other hand, we are going to analyze the cross-examination in relevance with adjudication proceedings under the relevant acts, under the Customs Act and the other allied relevant acts. Of course, we all know about the cross-examination and it is an art. Many lawyers have been engaged only to do cross-examination, and the trial court is abundant with such talents, and many stalwarts have come from trial court. The juniors must go and watch cross-examination in the trial court, and you must learn at the very first instance. It is an effective tool in the hands of an advocate so far as criminal trial is concerned, because the accused fate is in your hands by doing the effective cross-examination. So the cross-examination is one of the important aspect in every advocate's profession, we can say like that. So far as the today's topic is concerned, why we have chosen this topic is, there was a recent encounter between today's speakers, Mr. Satish Sundar, and he was assisting senior counsel, Mr. B. Kumar, and the department was defended by the another speaker, Mr. S.R. Sundar, on the very same topic, cross-examination under the Customs Act. And it was Mr. Sundareswaran appearing for DRI, also ordered to the arguments before the Honorable Court, and last week the judgment was delivered. That's why we have chosen this topic today, and of course it is very relevant in our day-to-day profession. That the next thing is what the Evidence Act says about cross-examination. Section 137 speaks about chief examination, cross-examination, and re-examination. Of course, the Evidence Act elaborately provides the manner of proof. In fact, Evidence Act in short is what has to be proved, when has to be proved, and who has to prove. The burden of proof and the manner of proof, standard of proof, everything is in Evidence Act. But coming to adjudication proceedings, we cannot say that the entire rigors of Evidence Act is applicable. On the other hand, the adjudication proceedings goes on the premises that the proof what required by the department is a mere preponderance of probability, and that is enough. So we have to see the Evidence Act as such is not applicable, but nevertheless the principles of the Evidence Act are applicable to the adjudication proceedings. So this is one part, evidence versus the adjudication. Then the department point of view, what they feel with regard to cross-examinations, their contention is they have power to issue summons, power to record statements. The recording of statements is judicial proceedings within the purview of section 193 and 228 of Indian Penal Code. So therefore, the department's contention is that we are doing our rightful job, and whatever we recorded by way of statement is a proper evidence. So therefore, cross-examination is not required. But of course, even when evidence is given in the court, that it also has to be tested in the court of law. So therefore, the department contentions may not be correct. There are several legal maxims on this field covers the issue of cross-examination, and of course, it is subjected to the principles of natural justice also. So the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court has said that the right to cross-examination is embedded in the principles of natural justice. Without cross-examination, the evidence cannot be accepted as such. Therefore, this topic assumes importance. Now we are going to see whether the speakers are going to speak. We have two speakers, Mr. Satish Sundar and Mr. S.R. Sundar. They are going to speak about the cross-examination in the context, say whether the right to cross-examination is a vested right or a valuable right. When the right to cross-examination commences, whether there are any exceptions to cross-examinations, what are the legal maxims and the relevant case laws govern this field. So now I request Mr. S.R. Sundars to address his lecture on this issue. Welcome to S.R. Sundar.
At the outset, I wish to thank Madras Tax Bar Association for inviting me on this question of cross-examination, which has got very relevant so far as indirect tax is concerned, because we come across very many litigation where the principles of natural justice is violated and writ petitions are filed. And I'm very thankful to Mr. Satish Sundar and D. Kumar, Senior Advocate, as well as Sundareswaran, in which we had worked a lot and made a material, and fortunately the judgment came last week. So we are able to have a great exposition of the various angles in which the adjudication mechanism, the cross-examination has to be needed. And to be, it is always a question, whether it's a vexed question or it's a question of situation. It depends upon the facts of the case. And the principle has been evolved from way back from our Madras High Court, from Rainbow case. It has gone to up to Tufan Singh, and very recently the Jet Universe case is pronounced. Before going into that, what is the concept on the basis for which the foundation in an adjudication proceedings? Kiran, can you give the first, the maxim governing the basis for the principles of natural justice, and next one, please.
So one thing, Mr. Krishnanand wants to say something. So in this, meanwhile, we will call him. Krishnanand. Krishnanand, Prithvi, unmute him.
Unmuting him, sir, 1 minute.
Ah, yes. He wants to say something.
One question before the speakers begin. First of all, there is no provision under the Customs Act for cross-examination. Secondly, unless there's an examination in chief, you cannot call it cross-examination. This is what I just wanted to say.
So it will be answered, sir.
It will be answered. It will be answered. Your query has been addressed by various courts. We'll take
Yes.
you to.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
S.R. Sundar, sir, your voice is little feeble, sir. Can you?
Now is it? No, am I audible?
Ah, yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Is it fine now?
Yes, sir.
See, basically the legal maxim all you are aware of, the foundation for the proper adjudication. The first one is nemo debit esse judex in propria causa. That is, no one ought to be a judge of his own cause. The other one is audi alteram partem, let the other side be heard. These are the basic two maxims which govern in any adjudication mechanism, quasi-judicial and other things. The basis is that the doctrine of fair play and a reasonable opportunity should be provided. This is the basis in which the maxims are been found and which has been applied in various case laws and adjudication proceedings. The other maxims, I don't want to dwell upon that. It revolves mostly on Article 20, subclause 3 of the Constitution, that no person is going to depose in the matter involving his own disgrace and other things, and no person is going to appear against himself. So these are the maxims which govern the principle in which the adjudication mechanism, so far as the cross-examination and of reasonable opportunity being provided. Can you go to the next slide, please? Am I audible to all?
If possible, little louder.
Yes, yes. 1 second. The next thing, is it fine now?
Ah, yes.
Yeah. The next thing which comes into the proposition, what is the need for a cross-examination? See, as you all know, the right to cross-examination, when it generally commences, there are settled position of law which says that it commences after the reply, a show cause notice has been issued, and after the issuance of show cause notice, after the adjudication proceedings is commenced, then your right emanates. The courts have consistently held that even at the threshold itself, before issuing the show cause notice and other adjudication mechanism being called for, you are not entitled for seeking for cross-examination. The next slide, please. Basically, the need for cross-examination, this is very, very vital for an adjudicating authority or for in adversarial litigation, a person, why he chooses to have a cross-examination. There are several aspects and concepts in that. If, for example, if somebody testifies or authenticates something and vouches that, and there may be a basis that he wants to rebut it, then how to do that? See, to weaken or qualify or destroy the case of opponent, this is one of the essentiality for need of cross-examination. And also the credibility and the general value of evidence or an accuracy is also an essential need for the cross-examination. There are also situations where there may be some suppression of facts or some discrepancy in the manner in which the adjudication, the show cause notice and materials has been relied upon, and to confront it, there may be requirement of cross-examination sought by the assessee. And most of the times, why it has been always taken a stand by the assessee that there are arbitrary actions on the part of the department or persons investigating. Therefore, to check on that, the cross-examination is sought for. But there are settled position of case law that it is not a matter of right, and it all depends upon facts of the case. I will take you on to that later. Another opportunity is given to the person that if a testimony or statement is given, it involves in the decision-making, reasoning and process. This goes to the basis on which the adjudication proceedings goes to the root of the matter, where the basis and reasoning is a requirement. Therefore, these are the general facets on which the cross-examination is sought for to establish in the adjudicating proceedings and also in other proceedings, as you are aware of. Okay, next slide, please. See, there are certain doctrines which have been established and consistently followed by our court, which play an important, prominent role so far as this cross-examination is concerned, and the principles of adjudication of done by the quasi-judicial authorities and other authority vested by statute. The first is the fair play action, as you all know, that is the right of being heard, Lodi Alteram Partem. Next is the real prejudice. See, if the person whom he seeks for a cross-examination is able to establish that not permitting to check the creditworthiness of the materials and documents and other things, if the prejudice is caused to him, then is definitely it is a basis that requires the cross-examination be provided. But there are certain occasions where there may be, you all know that useless formality, there is nothing will happen, it is only for belated tactics and other things which has been tried for. In that situations, there may be situations where it may be denied. But the one basic concept is, if you don't provide an opportunity at the initial adjudication side, the initial process, the right is lost, it cannot be cured in further proceedings. This is what has been consistently held by the court. Next slide, please. Now, there are several statutory procedures, even though Evidence Act and Criminal Procedure Code does not apply to Customs Act and other allied acts, but the principles has been applied in the process of adjudication. Section 30 of CPC deals with power to order discovery. The court has got a power. And 31, it has got power to summon a witness to produce a document. And 32, it gives a penalty. For example, a fine of ₹500 or civil prison or a warrant, and it can be done. And the process of summoning an attendance of witness is enunciated in CPC under Order 16. There are several provisions, certain important provisions I am dealing here with. The first provision is the summons should clearly state the time, place, and purpose of attendance to be specified in the summons. That is what Order 16 Rule 5 stipulates. Because there are occasions where I also faced as in appearing some of the matter, the substance is vague. It does not disclose what to be brought in, even that has been challenged. That kind of cases also we have come across. And Order 16 Rule 6 relates to someone to produce the document. And Order 16 Rule 7, the court has got a power to direct a person present in the court to give evidence or produce document. And Order 16 Rule 10 contemplates what are the procedure if he fails to comply with that. In several other acts, what are the consequences of non-protection? I will take you on later. This, so far as the statement, which has got a very on production of document, there are certain few repealed acts, which is in pari materia with section 107 and 108 of the Customs Act, which I will take you on the Customs Act because that wordings in the Customs Act is very essential to determine the nature of proceedings and inquiry. For example, if you take the Central Excise Act, Sea Customs Act or Service Tax, the word used therein is the inquiry. But if you see Foreign Exchange Act, they say investigation. So there is a subtle change in the wording used in the statute so far in the governing the production of document and giving statement. Explain this. Now, so far our purpose of discussion, we are mainly going to concentrate on these sections, which has got, that is one section one, the serial number 1 to 6. 107 and 108 has been put into a lot of debate from our court as well as up to Supreme Court. The 107 is not that rigorous. That is what court says. I can, Kiran, if you can take 107, please. 107 alone. You just take 107 alone. 107 and 108. It is not visible. If you see the language of section 107 of the Customs Act, it says that an officer or a person during the course of an inquiry, he can do two things. One, require a person to produce or deliver a document or a thing relevant for the inquiry or examine. If you come to 108, this has got very valid. This is this 107 and 108 slightly down. 108. It says that a person, a gazetted officer of a customs, shall have a power to summon any person. See, that is like 107 relates to the person in the inquiry, 108 to the any person to give or produce the document or during the things of inquiry. And he is also has to specify what are the things and documents to be produced. And all the persons who summoned are bound to be attend either through themselves or through authorized agents and make a true statement. And what are the consequences of that? If you see that 4, subclause 4, which says that the such inquiry shall be deemed to be judicial proceedings within the meaning of 193 and 228 of the Indian Penal Code. Now, if you all see the impact of this 107 and 108, what are the developments in law? See, a statement normally taken by the customs officer is an evidence by itself. First of the case was tested before our Madras High Court in Rainbow Trading Company versus Collector of Customs. That is 1963 2 Criminal Law Journal 636. See, it is the case where a very interesting point was argued that there is 171A is in pari materia with 108. That a statement taken by a person under 171A is hit by Article 14 and Article 23 of the Constitution. And any statement which has got an incriminating effect on him cannot be used against him. And also, court also considered the validity of section 24 and 25 of the Evidence Act. And our High Court has considered and held that the self-remuneration test given in England and America is wider than India after they took into consideration the Fourth Amendment and Fifth Amendment and came to a conclusion is not hit by Article 23 or Article 14. And it is also not contrary to Section 132 of the Evidence Act. And now, if you also see the other development in the Customs Act so far in the adjudication mechanism is concerned, a few more sections, you can go to slide 8, 122A. 122A, now this is being introduced with the effect from 10/9/2004. This 122 capital A has got a very significant role in the cross-examination. 122A speaks about the adjudication procedure. It says the adjudicating authority in any proceedings under this chapter or any other provisions of the Act give an opportunity of being heard by a party in a proceedings if a party so desires. And after that, you also know that more than 3 adjournment it should not be granted. This 122A has been come into effect in from and on 10/9/2004, and which has got a very, very great bearing in the adjudication mechanism. But if you all see, there is a subtle difference in section 122 capital A and 124 of the Customs Act. If you see 124C, which relates to confiscation, it says reasonable opportunity. But in 122 capital A, that reasonable word is missing. That the statute has consciously deleted the reasonable opportunity, only stating that give an opportunity of being heard. Because I will come to that later, because that reasonable opportunity, what has been dealt with the Honorable Supreme Court in the state of Kerala, the Shaduli case. Now, if you see, apart from 122 capital A, see, there are 2 other sections which has got an important role in adjudication proceedings on the relevancy of the documents and presumption into the nature of documents. The first of the section is 139 of the Customs Act. If you see the language of section 139 of the Customs Act, presumption into certain documents. The presumption where if a person, if any document is seized from the custody or control of a person, either under the Customs Act or under any other law, then it has to be presumed. Presumption to the document comes into existence. And also where certain evidences are received outside India during the course of investigation of such offences, then such document also is tendered by the prosecution in evidence against him, and that also presumption also takes into effect. The most important aspect in this section is the certain documents are also permissible even if it is not duly stamped. They are admissible in evidence. That is what the language of 139 of the Customs Act stipulates. And section 138B is also, which is in pari materia with section 90 of the Central Excise Act and section 32 and 33 of the Evidence Act, which states that if some statements are obtained by an officer of a gazetted officer of the customs, which may be relevant and for proving the offense or in any prosecution, or the truth and contents where the cases where the person is dead or he cannot be found or is incapable of giving evidence or is kept out by way of adverse party, and where the presence cannot be obtained without a delay or expense, then under such circumstances that statements are relevant. So these things you can all keep in mind before we go into the next development of law so far as the statement and the effect of cross-examination. This is a very, very interesting proposition where our Madras High Court has contributed on the effect of the Rainbow case. This AAR 1967 Madras 263, it was referred to a full bench. You all know about MP Sharma case and Kotikolo case, and after that Article 20 subclause 3, where a question was framed by the and matter was given under reference to the Madras High Court, which resulted in a full bench case, which says that whether a statement made before a customs officer is inadmissible by virtue of Section 25 of the Evidence Act and under Section 162 of CRPC. It was very, very beautifully articulated judgment where our full bench of the Madras High Court, after taking into various provisions, including MP Sharma case and Kotikolo and Rainbow case, have come to a conclusion that a statement made under 109 is not hit by Section 25 as well as 162, because a person there is only to collect the evidence and it may not be used for a prosecution purpose and other things. In that manner, it was held that 108 statements taken under 108 not hit by Section 25, and there is violation of 162 of CRPC. Before we go into the other aspects on this judgment, I also say that you all know under Section 24, if there is a threat, promise or other things and statement is given, if it is involuntary, it is not admissible in evidence. So that part of the burden is on the authorities who has taken such a statement, and burden is on the authorities. And so far as Section 25 is concerned, you all know that a police officer to whom a statement is given is not admissible in evidence. See, there is a transformation of, so far as the role of the customs officer is concerned, from Rainbow up to Duncan case. Now there is a shift from on the aspect whether he's a police officer or not. Now it has been referred to a larger bench. I will take you a little bit later. The next of the important case on the aspect is by this Percy Rostomchi Bashta case, where again the matter was first time in the Supreme Court after referring to various provision in between the Companies Act came, whether a statement is given before the companies in a liquidator, amount violation, and as well as the statement given to a railway inquiry officer. All these things were taken into consideration, and they said that the conviction was upheld in this case, that the statement, the inquiry conducted under 108 are not police officer, and Section 25 of the Evidence Act is not attracted. Certain principles has also been held in that case. That is Percy Rustomji. They say the effect of giving statement of truth is within the statute, there is no compulsion. So therefore Section 24 is not attracted. That is the language they have used in Percy Rustomji Basha, that the effect of the compulsion to give a statement is by virtue of the act, not by threat or other things. And the next case on the aspect where Percy Rustomji Basha was also considered and followed is the Pauni case. That is 1997 3 ACC 721. The probative value of the statement given to the customs officer was considered. And they say that a statement once taken by a person being a customs officer, the person is not deemed to be an accused. It is only for collating and collecting the information to do a process in terms of the act. Therefore, he is not an accused within the terms of Section 34. Therefore, any such statement taken by him is not being affected by virtue of Section 24 and 25 of the Evidence Act. Again, they reiterate the principle of Percy Rustomji Basha case, that the compulsion is under the statute, not by threat or other force. That he has to prove that it is involuntarily, and he has been that if any stand is taken that it is under compulsion or threat, the onus is on the person to prove that it is involuntary. Very recently, this Duncan case, a very interesting question of law came into consideration. That is whether, so far as the statement of 108 is concerned, whether there is violation of section 164 of CRPC. Supreme Court said that no, since the customs officer or not police officer, no such, once it is not a magisterial inquiry, therefore it is 164 does not get attracted. These are the few developments of law on 108. So, see, there are also other cases where the scope of 108. One is Nirmal Singh Pehelwan versus Inspector of Customs Punjab, 2011 12 ACC 298. They again reiterate that the customs officer conducting an inquiry under 109 are not police officer, and they follow Kanayalal case. Now, this Nirmal Singh Pehelwan case has been referred to larger bench case due to Tufan Singh case. And also IVRCL Infrastructure Project Limited versus Commissioner of Customs 2015 13 ACC 198. They also reiterate that a statement made by an officer being a customs officer are admissible under 108 of the Customs Act. So far, the right of cross-examination, I came across a very interesting judgment coming out of Kerala High Court, reported in 1977 Criminal Law Journal, NOC 156, where a motor vehicle car is been taken and smuggling activity was taken, and show cause notice has been issued to the owner. The owner of the vehicle says that as per the book sheet, book sheet of his car, it was only going from this place to this place. There is no way it is involved in any contraband activities or smuggling or etc. And he sought for cross-examination of one more person. And when the show cause notice issued, he appeared, and he was only seeking on for asking show cause notice without giving any reply. And ultimately, his request was rejected and order was passed. It was challenged. Of course, the writ petition was dismissed, but the principles of cross-examination is beautifully reiterated in this case, where they say that in any adjudication proceedings, whether it is judicial or quasi-judicial, an opportunity of being heard should be given. And it also tests whether the cross-examination witness is required or not. And they followed the very celebrated case of A.N. Kripke versus Union of India was followed in this case and applied in this case. And they interpreted section 124C of the Customs Act, which stipulates reasonable opportunity so far as confiscation is concerned, which includes cross-examination of the witnesses. And they also held that 107B is not a formal inquiry, but only an investigation to facilitate inquiry after following Balakrishnan case. A very important development in law, so far as cross-examination is concerned, is this case. This is State of Kerala versus KT Sharduli Grocery Dealer, 1977 2 ACC 777. It is a sales tax assessment case from Kerala Sales Tax Act, where one of the assessee was stating that he is maintaining the books properly. When the assessment order, when a show cause notice has been issued, he sought for that you rely upon certain materials from somebody else. He is not properly maintained. I want to cross-examine such person. That was rejected, and ultimately matter went to Supreme Court. The Honorable Supreme Court said that the right of opportunity, so far as quasi-judicial proceedings is concerned, is definitely a cross-examination is required, because when your adjudication depend upon a statement or material taken by a person which you want to rely upon it, necessarily he has to be cross-examined. If that opportunity is not granted, it will definitely violate the principles of fair play, and cross-examination is very essential. And this is where the development in so far as adjudication proceedings is concerned I can say that this is the one of the primary case which led to the development of law so far as cross-examination, even though it is not statutorily prescribed in the Customs Act and other allied acts. The next development of law is the Ambalal versus Union of India. Most of you will be aware of that. See, they say after interpreting section 106 of the Evidence Act, they say that the initial burden is on the department, not on the accused. And in this case, they reiterated that even though the Evidence Act and Criminal Procedure Code are not applicable, the principles are statutorily, the principles can be applied in adjudication mechanism. These are the development in law so far as the cross-examination is concerned, this Shadulal case and Ambalal case. This is the very, very famous judgment where most of us department counsels rely upon. Kanuga and Company versus Collector of Customs. In this case, a wristwatch dealer was charged with having some imported wristwatches, and a show cause notice has been issued against him having that he has been having watches from abroad, which is not supposed to have, and he wanted to cross-examine, state that it is not belongs to him, and matter ultimately went to Supreme Court. The Honorable Supreme Court said that in this case, the watches were produced from him, and whatever the materials have been given. So nothing more.
Sir?
Can you hear me?
So there seems to be some sudden disturbance in your audio.
Now is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible now?
No, sir.
No?
Yes, sir.
See, this Kanuga case, the Honorable Supreme Court has held that the need for cross-examination is not required because there is no requirement to examine a person who is given information. Somebody gives an information or something based upon which an inquiry is conducted or materials are collected. There is no requirement to examine such person to satisfy the assessing. In this case, apart from this case, our Madras High Court has cases also in one of the cases, that is 2010 251 ELT 194 Madras Manibharati Trading Company versus Commissioner of Customs. In this case, certain hard disks and DCQT were recovered from a person, and certain opinions were also given. They wanted to cross-examine the DRI, also to qualify about the DCQT report. Our court has, after taking into consideration of Kanuga, has thought that the requirement of a person who has given certain information need not be cross-examined and dismiss the writ petition. Another case which our Madras High Court has contributed a lot on cross-examination, for and against. The next one is Sanjay Shah versus Commissioner of Customs. That is 2011 264 ELT 211, where including Kanuga and Surjit Singh Chabra case has been considered, and the cross-examination sought for has not been granted. Now, I came across a very interesting case way back in 1992 by Justice Bhaktavachalam. Tamil Nadu Tobacco versus Union of India, 1992 57 ELT 51 Madras. See, when a show cause notice has been issued, it is the case of the petitioner that the officer is going to do this, and therefore on presumption he filed a writ petition and sought for a right to cross-examine. They say you cannot presume things and approach an authority without even filing a reply and dismiss the writ petition. Next slide. This also another important case in the process of cross-examination. Surjit Chabra versus Union of India, 1997 1 ACC 508. It operates around FERA and Customs Act, a confession statement made. A plea was taken that a right to opportunity cross-examining the witness was provided and the principle of natural justice is violated. The Supreme Court once again reiterated that the retraction is very late. Therefore, it cannot be presumed that your statement is not voluntary and dismiss the writ petition. Since the retraction made by a person under or statement made by a person under 108, which binds him, any retraction later on may not be worthwhile to consider. And one more case from our Madras High Court, that is A.L. Jalaluddin versus Deputy Director of Enforcement Directorate, 2010 261 ELT 84 Madras, where our division bench has considered the question of non-providing of cross-examination and ultimately held that in certain factual cases, if it is not given, it will not amount to violation of principles of natural justice. This is a very, very important case so far as the shift of the position of a customs officer, not as a police officer, and what is he presently. See, in Noor Agha, Honorable Justice Sinha has held that the position of a customs officer as not as a police officer has to be revisited. He has held that any statement made to a customs officer because he's a person with authority and he has got a dominion over a person who is stating so. Therefore, it cannot be said that he is not a police officer. He is not only having the power of investigation and also power to levy penalty and prosecution. Therefore, he has departed from the view which the courts have earlier taken and has held that the customs officer is a police officer and the legal fiction must be given to full effect that the customs officer is a police officer, and any the conviction based upon 108 statement cannot be the basis for conviction. Because this case has got an important bearing because the present development, because of conflict between Kaniyalal and this Nirmal Singh Pehelwan. In Tufan Singh case, the matter has been referred to larger bench. Next. This is a very, very interesting case by Lordship Justice Ramasubramaniam J, where he has taken a position that a person seeking cross-examination need not give any requirement or necessity to state. As a matter of right, he has got a liberty to do the cross-examination. He need not give what is the reason for seeking cross-examination. This is, of course, it is not considered other development in law, but this has got a very far-reaching effect on the position of adjudication is concerned. A person who is seeking a cross-examination, being a quasi-judicial authority and adjudicating mechanism, has got a right inherent by itself, and failure to give so will be amounting to violation of principles of natural justice. Next. The very recently this Telestar case where the FEMA rules were taken into consideration under section 40, they say that it was argued before the Supreme Court that so far as the FEMA rules are concerned, the adjudication Kanuga principle should be applied, and therefore there is no requirement of cross-examination. But the Supreme Court departed. No, when in an adjudication proceedings where certain rights or civil consequences and other thing is available, you are definitely bound to provide cross-examination. And of course, you all will be aware of this Andaman timber case, which has been consistently followed. If any order has been passed pursuant to any material, and if or a statement of a person to whom you want to impeach the creditworthiness, you have to allow cross-examination. And the very celebrated this D.K. Basu case was the state of West Bengal. It has been stated that the officers, not only the police officers, other DRI, intelligence officers, and everybody acting within the statute have got a investigation power and penal provisions capacity to do other things as to necessarily follow the guidelines. This is what I'm telling. This Tufan case matter arose out of section 67 of NDPS. See, the language of NDP, section 67 of NDPS is slightly different from 108. Section 67 of NDPS does not have the same language that of 108. It says any officer referred under section 62 of the NDPS Act during the course of an inquiry or in connection with contravention of any of the provisions of the Act can call for a person to certain information, produce or deliver any judgment and examine any person. It stops there. The other provisions like that of 107 and 108 was not, as 108 is not there in section 67. When matter was placed with regard to Noor Agha and Kaniyalal, the Honorable Supreme Court, after taking into consideration that there is a vast difference of language between section 67 and 108, and Noor Agha holding that customs officer, police officer, and the language in 67 is different with that of 108 is referred to larger bench. Yeah, this is the very latest case which me and Satish Sundar appeared along with Sundareswaran, which is delivered on 19/5/2020. This case, the Pavuni and Percy Rostam was followed, and Andaman Timbers case was also applied. And they say that the department took a position that they are eschewing certain statements, therefore they are not willing to. And the court has given a direction that if you are relying upon certain materials, if a cross-examination is sought for, you should definitely give. So far as the DRI is concerned, they say that there is no evidence on material to hold that there is any retraction and the statement is not voluntarily, and they dismiss the petition. So these are the certain recent developments of cases where cross-examination sought for and which is not provided. They held that it is principles of violation of natural justice. And in this Kyabra Alema case, the Bombay High Court has very succinctly dealt the case. They examined provisions of section 122 capital A, 138B, and held that the department should take all steps to bring a person for cross-examination if they are relying upon that, and non-provisioning of the same is violation of principles of natural justice. And in this Kalpana case also, this Bombay High Court has very elaborately dealt with the ambit of section 124C. What is the reasonable opportunity? It means even right to cross-examination. And Sampath Narayan case is a very important case on cross-examination, because this is the case where the impact of section 122A says that the principle of natural justice is applicable in adjudication proceeding so far as customs is concerned, which is imbibed under a statute which is not earlier available before 2004. I think
we plan to stop.
There are other case laws also. I will not rub because it is already 5:51. Srinivas?
Yes, sir. I am unmuting him, sir. APS, sir?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mr. Sundar. You elaborately touched upon the various provisions under the Customs Act and also the relevant case laws. In fact, at the opening of the session itself, one member was asking the question, when there is no right to cross-examination is provided under the Customs Act, how this topic is relevant. You have answered well. So it is part, the right to cross-examination is part of principles of natural justice, and of course it is a valuable right to the assessee. And K.T. Sadali Yusuf, we mostly relied on that judgment in all the sales tax cases. I think it is reported in 37 STC, I think so. I think Sundareswaran may correct that. We often rely upon their judgment. So now there is a tacit answer is given. Why that opportunity of cross-examination has to be given to the assessee. And all the more it is evident after an amendment is made to section 122A of the Customs Act in the year 2004. So no doubt now it becomes a valuable right to the assessee. So now we hear the other speaker also, then we will analyze the entire issue on the whole. So now I would request Mr. Sadi Sundar, who objected the rejection of opportunity to cross-examine when it was rejected by the customs authorities. He filed a writ. So that is also relevant. We have to see when a writ petition can be filed. Now, yes, Speaker S.R. Sundar clarified the right to cross-examination commences after the show-cause notice has been issued. So whether this should include a writ can be filed. So let us hear from Mr. Sadi Sundar. I request Sadi Sundar to address.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I'll be very, very brief. I don't want to tread on the same grounds and area in which Mr. Sundar has already taken us through. But my thinking is on a slightly different aspect. First of all, we should remember that show cause proceedings emanate from an investigation which is carried out. Investigation may be in the form of various materials. They may be documents or contents of hard disks or electronic devices, and of course statements. What the investigation agencies do is they resume these documents, then they issue summons to the person charged and persons connected with the transactions and try to record a statement to the needs of the investigation. For example, if they take documents like bill of entry, etc., or correspondences with the email correspondences between the importer and his supplier, etc., on a case of undervaluation, take that charge. They may find there are certain invoices which have been projected before the customs authorities for the purpose of making a declaration and payment of duty on a value. They may find parallel invoices in the system. Now, they may make an allegation saying that the party is undervalued and brought the goods and thereby evaded payment of duty. To that effect, they have the documents, but the documents cannot speak for themselves. Therefore, they try to record statements from the party to support the allegations. Now, this is what is crucial. These statements and all these materials form the fulcrum of the show cause notice. This show cause notice is used only for the purpose of adjudication. The same materials in the form of statements and other documents can also be a basis for initiation of prosecution proceedings. So prosecution proceedings may be initiated simultaneously with the show cause proceedings or at a later stage. Now we are not concerned about prosecution because once these materials are put up in the prosecution, they will have to be tested on the standards set by the Evidence Act and the Criminal Procedure Code. Now, as far as these adjudication proceedings are concerned, the test of proof is only by a preponderance of probability. Now, once a show cause notice is issued with all these materials, then a party is given an opportunity to rebut it. There may be proposals in the show cause notice for redetermination of duty, which is escaped, then for confiscation, then for penalty, and other adjudication liabilities. So party gives a reply. He is contesting the proceedings. Now, what they do is, they cannot straight away say that these materials are wrong, etc., They can, of course, they have their own proof. Now, one of the safest methods by which they can test the statements and other things is by seeking cross-examination. Now, there are two aspects under the Customs Act. One, the person has a right to rebut such statements and rebut the material which is placed against him in the show cause notice. And secondly, what is the evidentiary value of such statements? That has to be done. Now, in my submission, these statements by themselves under section 108 may be evidence in the IF law, as Sundar has already delineated in various Supreme Court judgments. But whether they can be straight away acceptable as evidence in a proceedings under the Customs Act and adjudication is a question which remains. My submission is section statements by themselves, unless they are corroborated, should not be used as evidence. Now, I will straight away, these are the two issues which I want to touch upon. Now, when the party makes a request for cross-examination in the reply, the adjudicating authority has to take a call on whether to permit cross-examination or not. In most of the cases which I have dealt with, including the case which we did, there is a stereotype reply from the adjudicating authority's office saying that cross-examination is not warranted. We have given you the documents, we have given you the statements, therefore you can rebut it. Or they take a stand that your cross-examination request is belated, not relevant. Now we seek for two cross-examinations normally even in this type of adjudication proceedings. One, statement of the purpose. We want to test the statements of other persons involved in the transaction, which is inculpates the person charged. We also want to cross-examine the officers who recorded statements of inculpation from these persons as also from the main person charged. Now, they also say that we have not recorded any statements from the officers concerned. Therefore, you cannot be offered cross-examination of the officers. Now, all this boils down to whether you have a right of cross-examination in the proceedings. Now, to unravel that, we will have to see the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Ambalal, which Sundar referred. The judgment is referred in 1961 Supreme Court, AR 1961 Supreme Court 264, where they say that in adjudication proceedings under the Sea Customs Act, earlier Act, principles of natural justice and the fundamental principles of criminal jurisprudence in the form of fundamentals of the Indian Evidence Act and Criminal Procedure Code will have an application to such proceedings. Now, how we can say that a right of cross-examination is part of natural justice? This has been laid down by a series of judgments, starting with service law. Earlier, you all know that department inquiries are conducted against delinquent employees, etc., by means of a separate tribunal in department proceedings. An inquiry officer is appointed, then a presiding officer is appointed, etc., where evidence is let in against the delinquent person. Now, in 1961 Supreme Court, 1623, in the case of State of MP versus Chintaman Sadasiva, which has subsequently been followed in a host of judgments, including 2008 Supreme Court, AR 2008 Supreme Court 876, New India Assurance Company Limited versus Nusli Neville Wardia, then State of UP versus Saroj Kumar Sinha, AR 2010 Supreme Court 3131. And of course, I will also refer to the celebrated judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court in Ayub Khan Nur Khan Patan versus Union of India, that is reported in 2013 4 SEC 465. What the Supreme Court says is very interesting. I'll just read a small portion of the judgment. It says, principles of natural justice includes a right to rebut the evidences put against the SSC delinquent in the course of adjudication by department proceedings is well settled. Such a right therefore includes that a party must be given an opportunity to adduce all relevant evidence upon which he relies, and further evidence of the opposite party should be taken in his presence, and he should be given opportunity to cross-examine witness examined by the proper party. Non-providing of opportunity to cross-examine would amount to violation of principles of natural justice. The judgment of the Supreme Court in Ayub Khan Nur Khan Patan also takes note of fiscal statutes like the Central Excise Act and other acts, where the department proceedings are conducted, and says that even an assessee makes a request for cross-examination of witnesses who have deposed against the person charged, then it is a part of fair play that and natural justice that opportunity of cross-examination should be given with respect to the demand. Now, there is one more principle which I would like to elucidate. As AP Srinivas said, what are the circumstances under which we can challenge where the rejection of cross-examination is made. Now, we have come across two judgments of the Gujarat High Court and our High Court, which followed the Gujarat High Court. And of course, there are a number of other judgments, but I just want to say on this. Normally, when you make a demand for cross-examination, the authority is expected to pass a speaking order, either accepting it. If he accepts, well and good. If he rejects it, then he has to pass a speaking order why he is rejecting the cross-examination, and then communicate it to the party. Then it is always open for you to challenge that decision by means of a writ petition, etc. Now, what if he does in the final order? If he doesn't pass a separate order, but he passes a final order confirming the demands and rejecting the cross-examination at the same time. Now, this has been frowned upon by the Gujarat High Court in the case of Vulcan Engineering, reported in 2013 297 ELT 190. And that has also been followed by our High Court in the case of VTRAG Enterprises, which is reported in 2015 320 ELT 32. Now, these are the circumstances under which you could challenge the order of rejection of cross-examination. Tilakaratnam Matchworks, which my friend referred, is a standalone case. It did not take note of any case laws or did not take note of any provisions, but went on first principles. And I also understand that the department has accepted it, subject to what AP Srinivas says, and given cross-examination. In fact, in the case of VTRAG Enterprises, which was decided by the Madras High Court, in which my friend Mr. Krishnanand appeared, Dr. Krishnanand appeared, the court held that non-giving of cross-examination of witnesses whose statements are relied upon was bad in law, and therefore remanded the matter back to the original authority for giving cross-examination. Cross-examination was conducted at a later point with much reluctance by the adjudicating authority. Now, before I wind up, I would only want to bring to the notice of this August gathering unreported judgment of Justice K.P. Sivasubramanian, as he then was, under the provisions of the FERA. This is judgment which is dated 24/6/2005 in the case of N. Sasikala and others versus Enforcement Directorate, in which my senior appeared for some of the petitioners. Three of the proceedings under the FERA were challenged on three grounds. One, that FEMA has come into force, and therefore proceedings under FERA cannot continue. The second objection which was taken is the request for cross-examination was made, but nevertheless the proceedings were sought to be conducted without giving cross-examination, therefore the proceedings should not continue. Writ of prohibition was filed. On the first ground, the court held against us, saying that the repeal of FERA by FEMA, the saving clause under 49(6) of the FEMA would operate, and therefore the proceedings can continue. But on the question of cross-examination, very elaborately argued and debated, and ultimately the court came to the conclusion, two conclusions it came to. One, if statements of witnesses and persons are relied upon, then it is the adjudicating authority has to take a call as to whether to give cross-examination or not. Two, if those are relied upon and sought to be made use of in the order, then all the more necessary that cross-examination should be given. Two, the department should take all out steps to summon the persons whose statements are relied upon for the purpose of cross-examination. Three, if despite summons they do not turn up, then their statement should be eschewed from evidence. Very important question. Where the Supreme Court, where our High Court also took note of the Supreme Court judgment in Kanuga. Kanuga was a case where the party wanted cross-examination of persons who had given information. There the Supreme Court said you cannot have such a right. But where a show cause notice is issued and these statements form the fulcrum of the case of the department, and the statements are relied upon by the adjudicating authority in adjudicating the show cause notice, then in my submission, that the statements can only be tested by means of cross-examination. Now, the other question is whether cross-examination of officers may be necessitated. We normally, if any show cause notice is given and the statement is adverse to the party always takes a stand saying that the statements are not voluntary and they've been recorded under atmosphere of threat, coercion, or intimidation. How do you establish that? If supposing a person has been kept in an investigation office like DRI, etc., for over 24 hours and statements recorded under circumstances which cannot really be, which can be said to be vitiated, then I get an opportunity to discredit my own statement by retracting it. One, I get an opportunity to discredit my statement by bringing the officers to the table and asking them as to what was the circumstances under which the statements comes to be recorded. I remember doing a case which Dr. Krishnanand also knows before the SISTAT, where what happened was a person was summoned on 2 days by the office of the DRI and statements recorded on charges of undervaluation. In the second statement, he gives a complete list of all the bills of entry which he filed with the date, number, quantity, and the quantum of undervaluation he has done. So therefore, we took a stand that I cannot even remember my phone number or my car registration number. How could I remember all this? Therefore, we took a contention that this is something which has been put by the officers, recorded, and the signatures taken from it. The adjudicating authority, of course, rightly rejected all this. He said, no, your statement under 108 is voluntary. Your statement under 108 is not before a police officer, and therefore we proceed to use that statement to lampoon you. Now, the tribunal took a slightly different view. Tribunal said, yes, you're right. You cannot, I don't even remember my phone number. And how can I remember all this? Therefore, to that extent, they said, yes, cross-examination of officers may be warranted. So therefore, what I want to submit is that cross-examination of officers concerned, you will have to establish before the authority that the statements attributable to you or statement attributable to the others may not be voluntary. And again, the burden is again on you, on the SSC. And if you are able to discharge that, then of course you will, these statements cannot be used. But one way of establishing how the statements cannot be used is only by effective cross-examination of the officers concerned. Oh, this again is a vexed question, and it's been debated in a number of orders passed by the court, our court, it's also the other courts. My conclusion is the affording cross-examination in the course of adjudication proceedings is one which is fact-specific to be decided on the facts of each case, and one which has vexed adjudicators and courts alike, and still remains a controversy between the SSC, person charged, adjudicators, and the courts. So these are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Satish Sundar. So there are 5 takeaways from your lecture today. So the first one is the principles of cross-examination is part of natural justice. And the second one is the proof what is required by the department is mere preponderance of probability, and a strict proof under criminal law is not required. Then the third one is statements must be corroborated by evidence. So the statements alone cannot decide the issue. It must be corroborated by evidence. And the fourth one is you rightly distinguish the Kanuga judgment by saying that after that there is amendments to the act, and the Kanuga was relating to cross-examination of an informer. So it's not cannot be considered as a witness. And the fifth one is every case must be decided on the facts of the case only, and of course still the controversy is not rested. These are the 5 takeaways from your lecture. So now my question to be would be that the recent judgment in Jet Unipex, where you both of the speakers have encountered on the very same issue, assisted by senior counsel Mr. B. Kumar and also by DRA counsel Mr. Sundareswaran. Jet Unipex, the High Court has held 2 propositions. The first one is the statements need not be corroborated. That means there are two propositions in the Jet Unipex judgment. It says, if it is, yes, you please add that.
Last operation.
The two observations in Jet Unipex.
Page number 280.
So my question is, how do you substantiate your contention is that the statements need not to be corroborated in all the circumstances? That was the finding in Jet Unipex.
Yes, can I answer?
Can you read just the two propositions, the final outcome?
I will just share the operative portion.
Yes. Thank you, Sundar. It's a recent one. Last week it was delivered. Yes.
68, from 68.
Directions. I think it's below. Come down little. Come down. Yes.
There are 70. Yeah.
70. 71. 71. Then you come down. Yes, you come down further.
72.
Yes, your own employees. So that was the distinction made by the High Court. Whether the statements are given by employees when they merely vouch based on your records, then how to say that all the statements to be corroborated? You can explain on that, Mr. Sadiq Sundar. Or
Yes,
probably you may contemplate filing appeal also.
Precisely. The judgment is dated 19/5/2020. Therefore, we still have time to take a call as to whether to file an appeal or not.
Yes,
But I think, I think the observations in para 73,
73.
73 need to be factored. Okay. I'll just read 73.
Yes.
Which is, first respondent is directed to complete the adjudication proceedings within a period of 9 months from the date of receipt of this order, since dispute pertains to import made by petitioner between 2010 and 13. It is for the first respondent to take the call as to whether it proposes solely rely on the statements recorded under Section 108 of the Customs Act for confirming the demand, in which case first respondent shall produce such persons for cross-examination by the petitioners. On the other hand, if reliance is placed on independent evidence gathered by the officers of second respondent, first respondent need not issue summons to the person whose statements were recorded under Section 108 of the Customs Act.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
The court also says first respondent is not governed by strict rules of evidence,
Yes.
but they shall be governed by the preponderance of probability and customs valuation rules, Article 14 of the Customs Act. Therefore, to that extent, if the adjudicating authority now wants to rely upon the statement of these two persons whose statements are forms of fulcrum of the show cause notice, then it is for the first respondent to issue summons to them for cross-examination. Therefore, I think this order by itself does not go against the SSC and can be interpreted both ways, anyway subject to any appeal which may be filed, which my friend will do.
Okay.
But what I want to basically submit is that if a cross-examination is sought for, then the authority has to take a call to dispose of such before passing any final order. And he should give reasons which can be tested in a court of law. If supposing the authority says, no, you have given it belatedly, that cannot be a reason, because if you recognize that right to cross-examination, is some sort of a accrued right,
Yes.
which is accrues to the party,
Yes.
then such a right cannot be disposed of in a flippant manner. And two, that right cannot be disposed of in a compendious way by passing a final order, confirming the demand as well as passing. Therefore, my thinking is that it is for the authority to take a call, and the decision of the authority is always subject to judicial review. That is my call. Thank you.
Yes, but in this case, the authority has already rejected your request. That portion of the order was not disturbed. That also you have to see. Okay, anyhow, well done, Mr. Sadiq Sundar. You have elaborated your points. Now I go to the another speaker, Mr. S.R. Sundar. I think the slide sharing can be closed. So S.R. Sundar, you have touched upon the retraction of statements. So when the retracts, it's nothing but a hostile witness as provided in section 154 of the Evidence Act. So whether in case of hostile witness, the evidence can be rejected has to be rejected by the department, or if it slightly supports the case of the department, whether it can be accepted by the department. So that point you can elucidate.
As the Supreme Court have consistently held that even though the principles of even though Evidence Act and CRPC is not applicable, the principle enunciated therein can be applied. So in adjudication mechanism, the department can take clue from section 154 and the recourses therein can be followed.
So this is what recently Justice Asha has passed the order in income tax case also. So when a person has filed a writ petition asking that the hostile witness must be made available for cross-examination, the writ petition was dismissed by High Court by saying that you can follow the procedure stated in 154. It is already explained by the Supreme Court, right? My another question would be to, you can slightly touch upon the cross-examination of experts, because the experts as such, they are not giving any report on the facts of the case. Normally their opinion would be confined out to the result only. What is the substance involved, or for what purpose the case was referred to the expert. So there is no scope to cross-examine anything on the aspect of facts within. So in those circumstances, how the cross-examination of expert is relevant, and whether a person, namely the assessee, without having any expertise on the subject, can he be allowed to cross-examine that expert? So that also you can clarify, Mr. Sundar.
There are divergent views on this aspect. See, one, so far as the cross-examination aspect is concerned, see, the Supreme Court in Vivek Batra case also held that it depends, it is not a straitjacket formula and depends upon case to case. Where in certain cases, for example, in Zaki Ishrati versus Commissioner of Customs, the assayer's evidence was sought to be cross-examined, but it was not forming the basis for passing the order, hence it was not interfered. However, in Rajesh Shantila Ladani case, where an expert witnesses materials, even though it is an opinion, was formulated and applied by the authorities, a denial to cross-examine, said that court deprecated that and allowed it. It all depends upon facts of each case. So the inquiry material with section 27 of Arbitration Act, where if you call upon an expert, what is the role and how it is to be done.
I will add something to that.
Yes, yes.
There are a number of cases in which you see classification issues which arise under the Central Excise Act and Customs Act, where the department obtains a report as to the nature of the product, etc., from experts who furnish a report. Of course, they don't depose anything. They furnish a report. But how can you test the report? If you may not be an expert, but you will be always guided by an expert in a lawyer or a consultant who can put searching questions on the report as to what is the basis of the report, how is it he arrived at a particular conclusion, etc., And he can also impinge on the report saying that it's a non-speaking one. Straight away, supposing there is a report saying that this article appears to be so and so. Now, what is the basis on which he has come to that conclusion? So therefore, those are cases in which you can always ask for cross-examination of the experts. And if such report is the fulcrum of the show cause notice for proposing confiscation or proposing duty, etc., then it has to be tested. It will have to be tested in a manner known to law. And one of the manner in which it can be tested is by asking the author of the report to be present for cross-examination on his report.
Thanks to both of you. Now we have covered all the aspects of cross-examination. So I want to tell one thing. We have referred to Justice Ramasubramanian judgment in the case of Manibatra, where happened to be Mr. Sadish Sundar and T.R. Sindhu.
The case is by Justice Rajeshwaran.
Oh, not
Manibatra. Kumar has appeared for the department.
Oh, yes, yes.
Telagavati case only Justice Ramasubramanian as he then was. And one paragraph where Satish Sundar unreported case is there of that Ferra case where his senior and along with him appeared. See, it speaks about two parts, para 69 and para 70. Para 70 is the right of cross-examination. 69, I will just read for audience focus on the reason. I'm inclined to hold that it is certainly open to the authorities to gather information for their own satisfaction pursuant to their investigation from any source. Such sources need not be disclosed. There is, of course, no duty to produce such person for cross-examination. There is also no need to produce anyone at the stage when the individual is called upon to show cause against the proposed proceedings. But when once the inquiry commences, and if the adjudicating authority ultimately proposes to rely upon the final order on the statement of any witness, that would ultimately render for subject to cross-examination.
Yes. So I would also like to bring upon the knowledge of the participants. There is a recent judgment by Justice Ramasubramaniam at Andhra Pradesh High Court sitting in division bench, where in the case of Manidhari stainless wire products, wherein in para 28 Lordship held that it is clear that the right to cross-examine is not absolute, at least in so far as the case of this nature are concerned. If there are factual grounds to show that the denial of cross-examination was based upon the sound logic, then the order of adjudication cannot be interfered with that. So this is the recent judgment by Justice Ramasubramaniam. I think it throws much light on the subject what so far we debated in this session. So my conclusion is that, as said, whether the adjudication in the adjudication proceedings, the preponderance of probability proof is enough, and it's not a strict proof as required in criminal law. And with regard to the cross-examination is or not, I think we all lawyers are thorough about cross-examination, and the juniors also must know about what is chief examination and cross-examination. Whenever they find time, they must go to the trial court and watch. And we can read, there is a book on art of cross-examination written by American attorney Francis, I think so, Francis Wallace. It's a compilation. And also here also we have a compilation by Justice V.R. Krishnaiyer, lectures delivered to apprentices at law. What kind of questions should be asked to the witness and what should not be. In one trial, the lawyer will ask the question, after all, you are an actor and you are doing it for money. And the witness immediately respond, of course I am like you. So in that circumstances, whether we have to prepare for that such situations, whether what to ask, and even if some unwanted answer is given by the witness, then how we go to the next question to the same witness. And also apart from cross-examination, we must be careful in cross-examining the perjured witness. The perjured witness is one, we may come across tutored witness. The perjured witness is slightly more than the tutored witness. He would be relevant to the case. He might have something direct evidence with regard to the case, but he would be tutored on the particular thing to say a falsity. So we must be very careful in cross-examining that perjured witness. And sometimes the silent cross-examination also will be aid to the, by doing silent cross-examination also, we must be doing help to our client. The silent cross-examination is when the witness is not spoken about much of the facts which is relevant to the case or which may not go against assessee, then we can leave that witness. Or if the witness is like a tutored witness, by eliciting more in the cross-examination, then some prejudice would be cast to the assessee. In those cases also, silent cross-examination is better. But without knowing what to ask, we should not lose the case by saying, I followed the silent cross-examination. I think with this, I conclude this session, and I request all the participants to come up with their questions, and it will be answered by the speakers. Thank you. Thank you. Culpable mental state of the assessee, that those provisions are also in that. So that also has to be seen in the criminal trial. Thank you, sir. I think we have come to the conclusion. Prithvi, any questions, or shall I conclude?
Sir,
yes.
I think we have answered all the questions, sir. And last one, the way which you answered the last one, it reminded me of the helicopter shot with Dhoni hit for winning the World Cup in 2011.
I want to inform all the participants about one of the lecture given by Honorable Justice P.N. Prakash recently in the MBA Academy. The topic was on falsus in unus and falseness in omnibus. It's a Latin phrase. That means if a falsity found in one thing, then the entire evidence can be found false. Of course, it was not followed by any of the countries, including India. This is what the Thiruvallur says. In Thirukkural also we have example, Tannanjerivathu poyyarka poithabin tannanje thannai chudum. If those two principles are followed, then there is no discussion about this cross-examination at all. If all the evidences are found to be a correct evidence and truthful one, then we need not to go for this cross-examination only. So that's what I conclude by saying that தன்னஞ்செறிவது பொய்யற்க பொய்த்தபின் தன்னஞ்சே தன்னை சுடும். So it's applicable to all the witnesses, whether you come for the chief examination or with the, as a witness of the prosecution or as a witness of the accused and assessees. Thank you, Onada, for the participants. I profusely thank all of you for hearing the very passionately till this end.
Natarajan has rightly put, you are a fit candidate for the next FM. With your principles, everything.
Judge material.
As just I wanted to inform you, must see Justice P.N. Prakash lecture on falses in unus and falses in omnibus. So we must hear that. So that's the information I wanted to convey. I once again thank you all and thank the Madras Tax Bar for giving this opportunity. And I also thank the speakers, Mr. Sadish Sundar and S.R. Sundar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, APS sir, and thank you very much, Satish Sundar sir and SR Sundar sir, for this wonderful session. I think this session we saw everything today. We had a very healthy discussion also, and there was a lot of enthusiasm by all the participants. So I thank once again. Before we conclude this session, Satish sir, you want to say something, sir?
No, don't say thanks, boss. This is just the knowledge sharing. Whatever little we know, we also want to share with the rest of the people.
Actually,
I'm very thankful for all of you who have been patient enough to bear with us in this entire webinar. Thank you very much.
this subject was suggested by Satish. It has come out well. Thanks. Thank you.
In fact, about this topic, someone told me, I don't remember, I think one week back or something, when they said that SR Sundar sir will come and talk about cross-examination, and it was, I don't remember who, but anyways, so before I close the session, just a small announcement. So there has been some connectivity issues of late for the last 3 days where people are not able to join. So in case if any of your friends who are not able to join, you can please ask them to update the app first. Without updating the app, if you're using the phone, then you will not be able to join the session. And in fact, if even after updating the app, if you're not able to join, then you have to restart your device first and then again re-log in. Then you will be able to join. So this is one information which I had to share. I will post it in the WhatsApp group also, so that people don't face any difficulty in joining. I once again thank everyone for attending today's session. Tomorrow we will be having the part 3 of Raghavan sir's lecture on works contract. So again, one more excellent session coming up tomorrow. So the details of it will be shared very soon. I thank once again to all the participants, and I'm ending the session now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.